Hi Booktube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing okay. Today I'm going to do the, got it written down. It's the Teacher Hat book tag by Gareth from Books, Songs and Other Magic. And it's a tag that he made to commemorate a milestone that he's at in his teaching career, and he's been thinking about the various roles that a teacher has to fulfill. And he very kindly tagged me when he did it, so I thought I'd give it a go. I was hoping to do it sooner, but I thought I'd give it a go today. And every prompt is inspired by different roles that a teacher would fulfill. So the first one is information giver, and here he's asking for a book with world building, and I wish I read more like sci-fi and fantasy and stuff like that, because it's much more applicable to that stuff, and it's definitely an area of my reading that I'm hoping in the future to concentrate on a bit more. But for the time being, I've got loads of really boring literary answers, and so for my book with an example of world building, I'm going with King Lear by Shakespeare. And what I love about this is that all of the world building is through dialogue. If you think of like other Shakespeare plays, I'm thinking of Romeo and Juliet at the moment, where you have all of that exposition at the beginning. You're told the scene, the situation, exactly what's happening before you actually get into the action of the play. Whereas in King Lear, and in quite a few others, but King Lear's in my mind because I've just read it, it's all done through dialogue, and it's quite an odd world that you're in. It's Britain, but it's in a kind of semi sort of, I don't know, kind of a, it's not really historical at all. It's an imagined past, kind of shrouded in mist, and so it's very different from any kind of historical Britain that you could really imagine. That there are sort of medieval trappings to it, but it's definitely not Christian. They're all invoking Roman gods, and there are just loads of little other sort of anachronistic things going on as well, which is just really, really fascinating. But you're getting all of this, and also just the situation, the political situation, the family situation, or situations as multiple family dramas. That's all through dialogue, because it's a play, and so it's just really, really wonderfully done. So that'll be my information giver. A skills developer. So this is to describe your ideal reading situation. I'm trying to remember his original video now. I think it's because you're kind of seeing certain situations, and then seeing who does best in this situation and who needs nurturing in this area. I think that's where he's coming from. I might be wrong. But anyway, to describe your favourite reading situation. Much like Gareth, I like reading at night, particularly when you know that you don't have to get up early the next morning, so you can just keep going for as long as you want. I also just love reading in the winter as well, I think because the nights are longer, but also if the weather's particularly bad as well. There's just something I like about getting cozy with a book at that time of year. Just in the living room or something with just one lamp on and the rest of the house is quiet and dark. That's my ideal. So yeah, it's pretty, I don't know, yeah, I like the rain and the dark, which is not everyone's favourite. Then number 3 is Counsellor. So this is name a book that displayed a lot of empathy. This is another one where I don't have a book to show you, but that's The Heart is a Lonely Hunter by Carson McCullers. And it's really, it's a book that's all about, I suppose it's about listening, but it's all these people who have all these things on their chest. Maybe they don't know exactly what they want to express, and they're just getting all this stuff out in conversations, but it's in conversations with with a deaf mute man who comes to a certain cafe every day to have his meals, and for whatever reason, people are just kind of attracted to him, and they'll come sit with him, and then they'll just talk through whatever situation that they're in. And I think the crazy thing about it is that by the end you realise that he's lip reading, so he's kind of getting an idea of what they're saying, but he doesn't really know what they mean. He might be getting the words, but he has no idea actually why they're saying this, or maybe it's actually just going over his head and stuff like that. So they're kind of longing for empathy, and you're feeling all of this empathy for all of the characters, because you're seeing all the things they're going through. And there are certain characters who do kind of feel a bond to each other, and even if they're even if they don't necessarily sort of fit into the same kind of social boxes, there is still a kind of connection there. So it's an interesting one, but it's certainly, as well as showing you these people who are longing for a kind of empathy from other people, it's also kind of stirring that feeling in you at the same time. Next up, we've got Social Mediator. So this is a book with some great social observation. And with this one, I thought I'd go with Alone in Berlin by Hans Verlade. And particularly at the very beginning of the book, in the first few chapters, all of the characters are living in the same building, and you're really just getting the life of this apartment building. And there are just these little things. It's people kind of listening out for people's footsteps on the stairs and things like that. And it's all of these little, social cues is kind of the wrong thing, but all these little elements of people's lives, which are kind of heightened by the fact that it's during the Second World War. The Gestapo are kind of potentially listening, or your next door neighbour might be informing on you, or sort of stuff like that. And so every little thing that someone does is kind of heightened, and so there's that kind of fear behind every action at the same time. But also just that kind of just having all these sort of multiple little worlds in this apartment block as well. It's a great way to sort of start it off. It kind of deviates from that as it goes on, but I thought that was really, really well done. Then next up, we have got Data Analyst. So analyse this year's reading so far. So I've got my computer. I'm going to have a look on Storygraph, because it's got loads of really geeky stats on it. So far this year, I have read, I finished 54 books, and that's 17,884 pages. So yeah, that's pretty good. I've already surpassed the goal I've set myself this year. I should probably get round to setting a new goal. And I've set a pages goal as well on Storygraph. So I set a goal of 20,000 pages. So I'm ahead on that one as well. And yeah, I mainly use Storygraph for these sort of reading stacks, just because it's really fascinating. It likes to split things up into moods. My top 3 moods are reflective, challenging, and emotional. Don't really know if challenging is really a mood. In terms of reading pace, if you're interested, 62% of the books I've read have been slow paced, and 38% have been medium paced. So by Storygraph's standards, I haven't read any fast paced books yet. And then let's see, just trying to find some that are worth mentioning. Let's go with my top 5 genres. number 1 is classics, that's 21 books. Then it's poetry, that's 20 books. Literary, which is 12 books. Historical, which is 6 books. And then short stories, which is 5. And my most read authors this year are Borges and Rilke. I've read both of them twice so far this year. So that's some stats for this year for those of you who are interested. Then next up we have got Improvisor, and with this one he's going with a book that has an element of the absurd to it. And this book, it's not just an element of the absurd, the whole thing is just totally absurd. And again, it's one I've read quite recently, and it's The Castle by Kafka. And it's about a land surveyor called Kay who's turned up at this town, and he doesn't know exactly what he's supposed to be doing. He's just been told to report to the castle, but whatever he does, everything's just kind of getting in his way. The castle is kind of just this very distant, far off place that's just shrouded in red tape, basically. It's just him trying to negotiate this really strange, foreign, dreamlike environment, but also he's acting like he's in a dream. He's making these really odd decisions, and you don't know whether he's trying to double bluff people or whether he's acting like he's in a dream. It's just really, really odd. Some of the strangest characters for me are these 2 assistants that he's given early on in the book, and he meets them, and he's like, he tells them that he was expecting his old assistants from who are on their way to the town. And they tell him that they are his old assistants, and yet they've also just come from the castle. So they're not, so it's a bit weird, and they're there to help him with whatever work he's supposed to do. And even though he's not been told what his work is, they're still following him around and trying to help with things. And because he gets them muddled up, he's told them to just act as if they're one person. So you've got 2 people trying to do one person's job. And there's a really weird bit where he's gone to see the mayor. He's trying to just clear up this whole mess and talk to the mayor. And it turns out that the mayor and the castle are like 2 totally separate authorities. So although the castle is kind of setting the rules on everything that should be done in the town, you've also got the mayor who's sort of more directly controlling things. And yet, it's a bit, it doesn't really make sense, but it's it's a bit odd. But anyway, as they're going through this, they're trying to find some paperwork in the office or in the mayor's house that's essentially like his job description, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And they're going through all the folders. Well, it's not him, it's his assistants and the mayor's wife are going through all the folders while he's talking to the mayor, and they just can't find it. And there's just a bit where the conversation between Kay and the mayor stops, and he just turns around and asks his assistants what they're doing. And the 2 assistants and the mayor's wife are sat on one of the cupboards, and the cupboard is kind of sideways on the ground because they've pulled so many documents out of it that they can't get them in. And so they just knocked over the cupboard, opened the doors, shoved as many papers into the cupboard as they can, and then they've sat on the doors to keep it closed. And there's so many just little strange things like that. Nothing really makes any logical sense at all. But there's something kind of hallucinatory to it that just kind of keeps you going through. I've not really explained that very well. Maybe I'll talk about it a bit better when I do a wrap up. But one of my favourite covers, and this is actually, I thought it was a painting by Kafka, but it's not. It's by Franz Kupka, and it's a painting called The Cathedral. But it's very cool. Like that a lot. And then let's have a look. Next up, we've got Life Coach. So that's a book with a mentor character in it. I was thinking of, it's over here, The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, which I think has like 3 different mentor characters. And it's a bit of a spoiler, but 2 of them will die. But they're all just representing, I suppose, just different ways to see life. 2 of them are quite academic in different ways, I suppose, very philosophic, and then there's another guy who, you know, is essentially just about enjoying life. And if you're looking at it from a very a philosophical kind of point of view, you might think he's a bit of an idiot, but at the same time he's getting so much more out of life than these other 2 guys who just seem to argue all the time. But yeah, so it's interesting to see the way those mentor characters influence the protagonist, even if Mann is kind of using them kind of cynically and a little I've forgotten the word. Anyway, we'll move on. The last prompt then is Timekeeper, and that's a book that features time in its narrative. And again, I could have gone sci-fi and gone with time travel. Instead, I'm thinking of like reflections on time and our relationship to time. So I couldn't really be thinking about that, and not bring up Proust. And you know, the whole thing is about memory, and particularly memories that we've forgotten, and then suddenly then triggered by something, and they just come back to us involuntarily. Yeah, that's really, really good, and also it takes a lot of time to read. As well, about, I suppose, how we experience time. I feel like it's not really something that's going on in this book. It's not something the author's talking about, but it's something that you kind of feel in the book, and that's really anything by Sebald, but particularly The Rings of Saturn. I think, like Proust, he just kind of flows from one thing, from one subject into the next. So it's kind of like when you're out on a walk and you're daydreaming, which is actually more or less what this book is. It is just sort of associations while he's out walking, and reflecting on him being out walking and things like that. But as well, it's, I suppose, I was thinking about this and now I've totally forgotten what I was going to say. But yeah, I think it's also, it's your kind of feeling that experience of time kind of collapsing while you daydream as you're reading it, if that makes any sense. So if you just imagine yourself kind of lost in a reverie and that kind of feeling, and then you come out of it and then you go into something else, that's what you're kind of experiencing as you're reading it. So again, it's not a direct, you know, he's not reflecting on the nature of time, but you're kind of experiencing the way we move through it in a kind of abstract way, I suppose. And then the last one, Reflections on a Particular Time, I suppose. And it's got time in the title, and it's A Time of Gifts by Patrick Leigh Fermor. And I've brought this up tons because I really, really loved it. I think particularly, so it's reflections on a particular time in his life when he's young, he's naive. It's the early 30s in Europe. And so on top of that, then you've also got the nature that of just, yeah, the nature of the past and how it's just totally locked off, and how, you know, so much has changed between him writing this and the actual experiences that he's writing about. And so the actual time and place that he's writing about doesn't really exist anymore. And it's really true for anyone reflecting on anything, but I think it's made particularly prevalent by the fact that, you know, you've got a world war between him writing and what he's remembering. So there we go. That's the Teacher Hat book tag. I don't feel like I explained any of these books particularly well. yeah, I must just be a bit too tired to be doing tags. But I'll leave it there, and I'll leave it open. So if you'd like to do it, please give it a go. It is quite fun, and it was quite hard to think of like the right books for the prompts. I did have some other possible answers, but yeah, I did my best to try and keep them relevant. Yeah, I think it would have been better if I was better versed in sci-fi or in fantasy. I think that would have given some really good answers. So if you're really into your sci-fi or your fantasy, then I think you'll do really well with this, particularly with the last one, maybe the first one as well. Anyway, I'm rambling, but yeah, thanks Gareth for the tag, and yeah, to any of you, feel free to do it. Thanks for watching. Bye.